We often believe that what we hold on to makes us stronger. We think that the more we cling to people, to possessions, to status, to memories, the more secure we become. But the truth is the opposite. Every attachment you carry demands a price. Some drain your energy quietly, some rob you of your freedom, others keep you suffering long after the moment has passed. And the heaviest cost of all is that attachments make you fragile, because anything you depend on outside yourself can be taken away. Think for a moment about the things you cling to most. Maybe it is a relationship you cannot release, even though it brings more pain than joy. Maybe it is the approval of others, where every opinion shapes how you see yourself. Maybe it is the dream of a past you cannot bring back, or the fear of a future you cannot control. Each of these attachments feels like security, but in truth, they are chains. The paradox of life is simple. The more tightly you hold, the heavier you become, and the more you release, the lighter you feel. The question is not whether you will pay, but whether what you are carrying is worth the cost. Attachments drain your energy in ways that are often invisible until the weight becomes unbearable. At first, it seems harmless to hold on to certain things. A relationship you know is no longer healthy, a job that exhausts you but feels safe, a habit that numbs the pain for a while but steals your vitality slowly. You tell yourself it's manageable, that it's not as bad as it feels, but deep inside, you notice how tired you are. You wake up with heaviness, you move through the day with less enthusiasm, and you wonder why joy feels out of reach. The truth is that every attachment demands energy, and the more you cling, the more life slips through your hands like water. Think of someone who stays in a relationship long after it has lost its respect or love. Each argument, each disappointment, each unspoken resentment slowly chips away at their strength. They carry invisible chains, draining energy not just during moments of conflict, but in the silence between them. Even when nothing is happening, the mind remains occupied, replaying conversations, anticipating problems, searching for solutions that never come. This constant loop consumes energy that could have been spent on growth, creativity, or healing. In this way, the attachment is not just costing them peace, it is costing them the chance to live fully. The same truth applies to work. Many people remain in jobs that deplete them because they fear change. They tell themselves, at least it's stable, at least it pays the bills. But while they cling to that sense of security, they pay with something greater, their spirit. Every day they walk into an environment that does not inspire them, they lose a little more energy until their potential is dimmed. Studies show that people stuck in unfulfilling jobs report higher levels of fatigue, stress, and even physical illness. The body carries the cost of attachments the heart refuses to release. Even small habits drain us when they turn into attachments. Think of someone who clings to their phone, scrolling endlessly through social media. At first, it feels like rest, like entertainment. But slowly, the attachment steals hours, focus, and mental clarity. They wake up feeling scattered because their attention is fractured in 100 directions. What seems like a harmless attachment ends up draining one of the most precious resources they have, time and presence. Energy is the currency of life. Where you invest it shapes who you become. But when attachments consume it, there is little left for what truly matters. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with heavy stones. Each stone represents something you refuse to let go of. The longer you carry it, the weaker you become. And yet, you wonder why the journey feels impossible. If you could only put down what no longer serves you, your steps would become lighter, and your energy would return. The cost of attachment is not always dramatic. It is often quiet, but over time it leaves you drained, exhausted, and far from the life you are meant to live. Attachments steal your freedom in ways so subtle that many people do not notice until they feel trapped. Freedom is not only about the ability to move where you want or say what you please. It is about the inner spaciousness to live without chains around your heart and mind. The paradox of attachment is that while it promises comfort, it often delivers captivity. The more tightly you hold, the less room you have to breathe, and the more you depend on that very thing to feel alive. Think of someone who builds their entire sense of worth on how others perceive them. Every choice they make, what to wear, what to say, what to post online, is filtered through the fear of judgment and the craving for approval. On the surface, they appear free, expressing themselves to the world, but in reality, they are shackled to validation. Their moods rise and fall with likes, comments, and recognition. They cannot move naturally because their steps are dictated by invisible strings. The cost of this attachment is their freedom to be authentic, to live without performance. Possessions, too, often imprison more than they liberate. Consider the person who spends their life accumulating wealth, luxury, and things. At first, it feels empowering to own, but over time, ownership flips. They are no longer the master of their possessions. Their possessions are the master of them. They worry about losing them, insuring them, protecting them. Their happiness rises and falls not with the richness of their experiences, but with the state of their material world. True freedom is not the abundance of things, but the ability to walk away from them without fear. Relationships can also reveal this trap. A partner who clings desperately to the other out of fear of being alone loses their ability to love freely. What began as affection becomes control. Instead of trust, there is constant checking, doubting, demanding. Love that was once alive now suffocates under the weight of possession. Here again, attachment steals freedom. Not only the freedom of one partner, but also the other who feels caged instead of cherished. History offers countless examples of people who traded their freedom for attachments. Monarchs who clung to their thrones lived in constant paranoia, terrified of betrayal. Leaders who clung to power often became prisoners of their own fear, unable to rest, unable to trust. Even today, ordinary people repeat this pattern when they cannot release what was never meant to be permanent. True freedom begins when you loosen your grip. It doesn't mean you must renounce all things, live without relationships, or abandon comfort. It means you hold lightly. You can enjoy without clinging, love without controlling, succeed without being enslaved by success. When you practice this, the mind becomes lighter, your steps less bound. You no longer need the world to conform to your attachments in order to feel at peace. Attachments steal your freedom quietly, but when you see it clearly, you understand that letting go is not loss, it is liberation. Attachments magnify suffering because they make us relive pain long after the moment has passed. Pain itself is a natural part of life. Loss, betrayal, disappointment, failure. These are storms every human being must pass through. But when you attach yourself to these storms, when you refuse to let go of what hurt you, you carry the rain clouds with you everywhere. The event may be over, but in your mind it repeats again and again, and every repetition deepens the wound. Think of someone betrayed by a close friend. The betrayal happened once in time, but the person replays it endlessly in thought. Every reminder reopens the cut. Instead of healing, the wound becomes infected with bitterness. This is the hidden cost of attachment. You pay not only in the moment of pain, but every day you refuse to release it. In psychology, this cycle is called rumination, and countless studies show it fuels depression, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion. It is not the event itself, but our unwillingness to let go that creates endless suffering. Even joy, when clung to, can transform into suffering. Imagine a person who had a period in life where everything felt perfect, love, health, success. Years later, they cannot stop longing for those better days. Instead of cherishing the memory, they turn it into a chain, comparing the present against the past, always finding today lacking. Their attachment to happiness from yesterday blinds them to the gifts of today. What once was a blessing becomes a burden simply because they refuse to release it. In relationships, this truth becomes even clearer. How many people stay bound to someone who has already left, physically or emotionally? They keep reliving old conversations, checking old photos, imagining what could have been. The person is gone, but the suffering remains because the attachment keeps the wound alive. Freedom doesn't come from erasing the memory, but from loosening the grip. You don't forget the past, but you stop letting it control your present. Even on a cultural level, entire societies carry suffering through attachment. Generations inherit grudges, refusing to release old conflicts, and so pain continues through wars, division, and hatred. What was once a wound becomes an identity, and that identity magnifies suffering for countless lives. Letting go is not weakness, it is strength. To release is to acknowledge what happened, to honor the lesson, but to refuse to let it hold power over you anymore. It is choosing to feel pain once, not 1,000 times. The waves of life will always rise and fall, but if you cling to each one, you will drown. If you learn to let them pass, you will find peace even in the storm. Suffering grows in the soil of attachment, but freedom blooms the moment you let go. Attachments distort clarity because they fill the mind with noise, and when the mind is crowded, it cannot see the path ahead. Imagine walking through a forest while carrying too many objects in your arms. You try to hold on to everything, branches, stones, bags, tools, until your vision is blocked. You stumble, not because the path is unclear, but because your arms are too full. In the same way, when you cling to too many attachments, past hurts, future expectations, relationships that drain you, possessions you can't release, your inner sight becomes clouded. You can no longer distinguish what truly matters from what only distracts you. Think of someone who holds on tightly to a certain outcome. Perhaps they are determined that their career must unfold in a specific way, or that their partner must behave exactly as they expect. When life shifts, as it always does, they resist. Instead of adapting, they fight reality, blind to new opportunities because they are attached to only one version of success. How many doors go unnoticed? Because we are staring at the one that has closed. The attachment does not just cause disappointment, it blinds us from clarity about what comes next. A common example is when people cling to grudges. They cannot see the person in front of them as they are today because their vision is clouded by what happened yesterday. Every interaction is filtered through old wounds, and they fail to recognize growth, change, or the possibility of reconciliation. The clarity of the present moment is lost, and what remains is distortion. Science also supports this. Psychologists studying decision-making have found that people who are overly attached to specific outcomes experience higher levels of stress and indecision. Their attachment narrows their perspective, creating something known as cognitive rigidity, a state where the mind cannot see alternatives clearly. On the other hand, people who practice detachment are more flexible, creative, and able to find solutions because their vision is not blocked by clinging. Even spiritual traditions emphasize this. In meditation, the goal is not to suppress thoughts, but to stop attaching to them. When the mind learns to let thoughts rise and fall without clinging, a deeper clarity emerges. This is why many describe moments of detachment as feeling like a fog lifting. You see things as they are, not as your attachments insist they must be. Clarity is not something you force. It is something that appears when the clutter is removed. Just as muddy water clears when it is left undisturbed, the mind becomes clear when attachments are released. Only then can you see the path beneath your feet, the opportunities around you, and the truth within you. Attachments distort clarity by filling life with noise, but when you loosen your grip, silence returns, and within that silence, guidance appears. Attachments make you fragile because the moment your sense of worth, identity, or security depends on something outside of yourself, you place your strength in shaky hands. Fragility is not the absence of power, it is power built on foundations that can crumble. And attachments, no matter how comforting they feel, are always uncertain. People change, positions fade, circumstances shift. The tighter you cling, the more vulnerable you become when life inevitably moves. Think of someone whose entire identity is built on their career. As long as they are successful, respected, and achieving, they feel strong. But the moment they lose their job or their status begins to fade, their confidence collapses. Their attachment has made them fragile because their sense of worth was never truly their own. It was borrowed from external success. In contrast, the person who knows their value independent of their position may stumble when life changes, but they do not shatter. Their strength is not attached to one circumstance, so they can adapt, rebuild, and continue. The same fragility shows up in relationships. When love becomes possession, when you believe your happiness can only exist through one person, then you place your heart in their hands. If they leave, or even if they simply change, your world feels like it ends. Attachment disguises itself as love, but in truth, it is dependency. Real love is strong because it is free. Attachment is fragile because it is afraid. Material possessions reveal this truth as well. Someone who builds their identity around wealth or luxury becomes fragile, because every fluctuation of fortune threatens their sense of self. The market falls, a business fails, something is stolen, and suddenly they feel lost. But possessions are never permanent. When your value is attached to them, you live in constant fear of loss. The irony is that in trying to secure happiness, attachment makes it more unstable. Even on a societal level, history is filled with empires, leaders, and systems that appeared strong but were in fact fragile because their power depended on control, fear, or dominance. The moment those attachments were broken, collapse followed. True strength has never come from clinging. It comes from resilience, from the ability to bend without breaking, to lose without losing yourself. There is a story often told of a tree in a storm. The rigid tree, attached to its shape and unwilling to bend, snaps when the wind is too strong. But the tree that is flexible, whose roots are deep, yet whose branches can sway, survives. This is the difference between strength built on attachment and strength built on inner freedom. When you cling, you make yourself fragile, because the world is always changing. But when you release, you become unshakable. You can lose possessions and still remain rich, lose status and still remain worthy, lose people and still remain whole. The less you cling, the less life can break you. Every attachment you hold has a price. Sometimes you pay with your energy, sometimes with your freedom, sometimes with peace of mind, and often with your very strength. One chain alone may seem light, but over time, each one adds weight until you wonder why the journey feels so exhausting. And yet, most people never stop to ask, is this worth carrying? When you look back, you will see that the moments you felt most alive were not when you clung the hardest, but when you allowed yourself to release. Freedom, clarity, resilience, they do not come from adding more, but from letting go of what no longer serves you. Life will always move, people will change, circumstances will shift. To cling is to fight the nature of life itself. To release is to flow with it. The lesson is not to detach from everything, but to recognize that only some attachments are worth the cost. Love that nourishes, values that guide, a purpose that inspires. Everything else is a debt that drains you slowly. When you learn to pay wisely, you no longer live fragile, exhausted, or trapped. You live light, you live clear, you live free.